If you want to be really miserable while hiking, you should do the following things. Today I'm going to talk about the typical mistakes beginner backpackers make, and I was definitely one of them, and how to perhaps avoid making those mistakes. I'm going to start off with some typical ones that you've probably heard of before, and then go into some more unusual ones that you may not have thought of. And so definitely stay until the end to find out what those mistakes could be that you could be doing. The first mistake that beginner backpackers do, especially at the beginning of a thru hike, is that they pack way too much food. There is a saying that we pack our fears, so being worried about not having enough food is definitely one of those fears. But usually you don't need to pack more than 3 to 4 days of food, and after hiking for a bit you understand how much food you really are going to be eating. But it is not unusual for beginner backpackers or beginner thru hikers to pack way too much food, putting a lot of weight on your back. It's not really being necessary. The second typical mistake, and I'm definitely one of those people who does that still continuously, is pack too many clothes. Again, we pack our fears. A lot of people are worried about freezing at night, and so packing 2 or 3 sets of the same thing is not an unusual thing that beginner backpackers or beginner thru hikers do. Again, it's very similar to the food. After a while you understand what types of clothes you really do need or not need, and then after a while you'll be able to kind of dial it down and understand what are essential pieces of clothes. Another big mistake that a lot of backpackers on the Appalachian Trail or thru hikers on the Appalachian Trail do is carry way too much water. The Appalachian Trail has a lot of water sources, and there's barely ever any concern of being out of water. So carrying more than 1 or 2 liters of water at a time is really not necessary, and it's just putting extra strain on your back. The next mistake is not eating or drinking enough. It's very common to just kind of want to hike and not stop. At least that's what I would do sometimes, and therefore not eat or not drink enough. And that can be quite dangerous because you can get weak, you can get hypoglycemic, and that can create dizziness, as well as you could possibly pass out. Therefore, do make sure that you eat enough food, especially drink enough food while doing a long distance hike. The next typical mistake is not putting on an extra set of clothes when you get to camp. So you've hiked all day long, you're pretty warm from the hike, you get to camp and you forget to put on that extra layer. And that's quite dangerous, because as soon as your body cools down, you now are going to start getting very cold and you have a potential of getting hypothermic. So make sure that when you get back to camp and it is a little bit colder than usual, make sure that you put on that extra layer and keep yourself warm. The next mistake is wearing cotton. Another saying on the Appalachian Trail or in any kind of hiking environment is that cotton kills. Why does it kill? Because when cotton gets wet, it does not dry quickly and it does not retain warmth. So hikers are not recommended to wear any cotton, and therefore do not wear cotton while hiking, especially in cold weather. Another mistake is to use your trekking poles incorrectly. I definitely did that because I had never used any trekking poles before. There is a certain way to hold the loop. That means you come from the bottom and you go up through. A lot of people, they try to just go from the top, and then that could definitely create some damage to your arms. And the other thing is not using the trekking pole tips correctly. There's a bunch of different tips that your trekking pole comes with, and I started to use only the rubber tips, and they made me slip and fall onto my knees. So definitely look at your trekking poles and what is most comfortable for you and how to use it so that the trekking poles are actually going to be beneficial for you. The next big mistake that a lot of thru hikers do is run out of money. You definitely need to prepare for a long distance hike, such as 5 to 6 months, and understand that you're going to have bills, maybe at home, but that things cost money on the trail. You will have to spend money for hostels, for shuttles, for food. If you hang out with other people, you might go to restaurants, and it's just going to add up. So there are a lot of hikers that will run out of money pretty shortly into the hike or halfway through a thru hike. So make sure that you do have enough funds to be able to finish an entire thru hike. And now I'm going to get into the little bit more unusual mistakes that beginner thru hikers or backpackers do. And one of the mistakes is wearing shoes that other people recommend and you just think that they will work for you. I did that mistake. I did the Lone Peak Ultras. I thought those were the cutest shoes and they seemed to work for a lot of thru hikers. And so I tried to use those shoes, and after my third pair, my feet were pretty much destroyed and I had to stop every 3 to 4 miles to take my shoes off and massage my feet. And I was seriously worried that I would not be able to continue my hike. I started tripping a lot more, and one time I fell onto my face. And that is the moment when I realized I need to do something about my shoes. And eventually I switched to another pair that I didn't think was cute at all. And I didn't think would work for me. They ended up being the best pair of shoes for me. And they were so good to my feet. My feet stopped hurting, and I was able to hike all the way to Katahdin. Another mistake, and that's going back to camping. While you should wear that extra jacket while in camp and eating and, preparing for the evening, setting up the camp, all of the things, all the activities while you're at camp, you definitely should wear that extra layer. But when you are in your sleeping bag, a lot of hikers make the big mistake of wearing too many layers. Now, why is that? Because your sleeping bag, especially if it's a down sleeping bag, works because of your body heat. So it won't function if it does not get body heat from you. If you wear too many layers, your body heat from your skin is not going to be able to travel to the down, and therefore your sleeping bag or sleeping quilt will not be able to create the heating that it needs for you to stay warm. So wearing too many layers can actually be counterproductive, and make sure that your sleeping bag can get your body heat to activate warming up. Another big mistake is to let your water filter freeze at night or even during the day. I think the whole freezing at night is a little bit more common. People are a lot more aware of that. So if you have a water filter and temperatures are going to be in the freezing temperatures at night, make sure you take your water filter and put it with you into the sleeping bag, so that way you keep your water filter from freezing. The other mistake though is having a water filter freeze while hiking, and that is something that I did. I had my water filter out while I was hiking in freezing temperatures, and the danger of it having frozen was very high. So keep that in mind while hiking, that if it is freezing temperatures outside, you still have a potential of having your water filter freeze, and therefore make your water undrinkable, because now you have potentially contaminated your water source with a broken filter. Make sure that you always keep your water filter on your body when there are freezing temperatures. The next big mistake is having stuff dangle all over your backpack. So some people, they like to hang things on their backpacks, maybe another bag, maybe have too many clothes hang on it. Or like, I don't know, I saw a frying pan hang off of somebody's backpack, and that is just, first of all, it doesn't look cool, but second of all, it actually creates a problem with regard to balance. It will offset your backpack because things are going to just swing all over the place, and if you're anywhere near an area that requires balance, that's really going to affect that. So make sure that you have everything packed tightly and close to your pack, and that things don't really dangle and could get snagged on anything or could create any sort of off balance for you. The next big mistake is using a pack cover but not a pack liner. Honestly, pack covers don't really work that well. I can tell you from personal experience. So your backpack is going to get wet if you have a pack cover. But another way to help take away the potential of your things getting wet is to have a liner inside of your backpack. And that could be just a trash compactor bag. It can be an actual liner for a backpack. So whatever you desire, do make sure that you have a backpack liner instead of a backpack cover, because it's going to be a lot more efficient than a backpack cover. Another unusual mistake that you may not think of before you do start hiking is setting your tent up in a puddle. So you want to make sure that when you look up for a tent site, that it is a nice flat area, that there would not be a potential for water to accumulate, because when you set up your tent in a puddle, that's just gonna call for a disaster. Your tent is gonna water's just gonna get into your tent and your stuff is gonna get super wet. So make sure that you set your tent up that has good draining areas and is a nice flat area. We're almost done with all of our mistakes, but one big mistake that a lot of hikers and thru hikers do is they hang their wet clothes inside of their tent. And I did it. I thought my clothes were going to dry up if I just hang them. They won't. If it's cold and if there is a lot of moisture in the air, your clothes will never dry up, especially your socks. So another way to go about that is actually to put your wet socks inside of your sleeping bag at night. And I know it sounds totally opposite of what you would want to do, but your body heat is actually going to dry up those clothes a lot quicker than if you hang them inside of your tent. And the last big mistake is worrying all day long about getting to your campsite to make sure that you still have a camp spot. That is just a really great way to destroy or ruin your hiking experience, worrying about what could be and if there's going to be a tent site. So you'll find a spot. If you do get to camp and there's not a tent site, you'll find another spot just a little bit down the road in a dispersed site or something like that. But most likely there will be a spot. There has been times where we worried about not being able to get a spot. We get to the campsite and there are so many spots available. So don't do any worrying. This is supposed to be a trip where you relax, you have fun, you enjoy the outdoors, and worrying is literally the worst thing that you could do. So I hope you enjoy that. I do post hiking related sort of videos at least once a week. If that's your sort of thing, do consider subscribing. Hitting that notification button definitely helps my channel. I've recently reached 6,000 subscribers. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.